dear wrenchers, and welcome back to Airhead Barn to our another Tech Talk topic. Last time we started talking about tools, and today we are going to talk about torque wrenches. I'm going to show you which torque wrenches I use. It's absolutely no need that you have all of them. I think I have actually too much, because in the past I would buy a torque wrench, use it for a car, but then for a motorcycle I was able to find some kind of nicer torque wrenches, and those old torque wrenches I didn't find useful anymore, but I still have them. And I'm going to walk you through some of the ins and outs of torque wrenches. We can start with the smallest torque wrench that I have, and usually I use that one for smaller bolts. For instance, when you want to tighten those bolts and nuts that hold, for instance, oil pan or filter housing, oil filter housing, all kind of covers, for instance, the timing cover. You need to be very sensitive when torquing those bolts and screws, and the reason for that is they can easily strip the threads. Usually torque setting is really low, and you should never attempt to use big and beefy torque wrench. Try to tighten those. Generally, rule of thumb is never use torque wrench below 10 to 15% of a full capacity. So for instance, if something is, let's say, maximum rated at 100 foot-pound, or let's say also 100 newton meters, you should not try to torque something that's below either 10 or 15 foot-pounds, or if you are a newton meter scale, 10 to 15 newton meters. Always keep it in an operating range, and that's about 10 to 15% of a maximum scale. Said that, let's start with the smallest one I have. My torque wrenches are not all crazy expensive. Some are better, some are worse. What I had on my mind, if I need to tighten something precisely and on a lower end, I would get myself a more expensive, more precise torque wrench, something that that requires like core power. You can go with a cheaper torque wrench, because tolerances are much higher there. That was my reasoning. It doesn't need to be right, but that's where I'm coming from. So the smallest one I have is made by CDI. It's traceable to NIST standard, and this one is in inch-pound, goes all the way from 20 to 150 inch-pound, or in newton meters it would be 2.8 to 16.4. This is the one that I'm talking about, for all covers, oil pan, like a filter cover or housing. I use this one. Because those are usually 8 to 10 newton meters bolts that you are using there, which is like 70 to 90 inch-pound. So this one fits perfectly there. It's quarter inch head, and this is the one that I'm using for that application. Then, as we move on, I have two torque wrenches that are 3/8 of an inch. This one is AC Delco, and it's digital torque wrench. This one is also traceable to NIST standard, and this is the torque wrench that I mostly use for all torquing on my Airheads. I absolutely love this torque wrench. It's very repeatable, great torque wrench. Before I bought that one, I had another 3/8, which is like a spring-loaded mechanical torque wrench made by Husky. Click type, also really nice, but since I bought that one, I mostly use that one. Okay, then when we need to do some bigger jobs, I have half-inch torque wrench. This is made by Pittsburgh. It's Harbor Freight. It still works fine. This one goes from what's like 14 to basically 200 newton meters, or inch-pound, or foot-pound is 10 to 150. And this one can get most of the things done on airheads, except for, you know, those couple offs. Like for instance, if you are doing that retaining nut on a shaft that requires bigger range than this, that one goes over 200 newton meters or over 150, you know, foot-pounds, and this one is not able to make it. Now you could technically, you know, achieve that kind of result by putting extension, and then, you know, you need to correct for that thing, or you will get a bigger torque range. Since I'm sometimes also working on cars where I need a bigger torque range, you know, I have that one, but I'll also explain, you know, how to use a smaller torque range and then correct the number. And this is the biggest torque range I have. It comes with 3/4 head. This one goes from 50 all the way to 300 foot-pound, or in newton meters is basically 70 to over 400 newton meters. And this one is definitely, you know, big enough to cover, you know, all big nuts on the airhead, including that retaining nut on a drive shaft. All right, now, you know, a couple of things about torque wrenches. Torque wrenches should never be substituted for your ratchets. The reason for that is torque wrenches are usually very precise tools. They are more expensive and they're ratchets, and you should never use it as a ratchet. That's why you have ratchet, not torque wrench. And another thing, which is like huge no-no, torque wrenches are not breaker bars. They can, especially big ones, they can torque a lot, you know, they have power, but you should never use it for that. Another thing, if you have spring-loaded torque wrench, like a manual one, like most of these are, whenever you are done with the job, back that nut off. The reason for that is you don't want to put too much tension on that spring for a longer period of time, because it will become saggy. Next time, or maybe in a year, you know, when you are going to use it, it will have a wrong readings and it won't be accurate anymore. So always when you are finishing it, don't leave it, back it out. That's the best practice. That's how it should be. Don't leave it at that setting, because it's not going to last you very long. At least it will not produce accurate results anymore. With a digital, you don't need to worry about it, because it doesn't have a spring and it's completely different way of operation. Alright, final thought about torque wrenches that I want to mention is correction. If you are adding length, you know, with any kind of extension that is in the same line as your torque wrench, you are adding more momentum, more torque to that torque wrench, and that should be corrected. So all those adapters, extensions that you are having in the same line as your torque wrench, for instance, imagine you have a torque wrench and now you add here extension, you need to correct for that extension, and correction is added compared to the, you know, size of the torque wrench. For instance, if your torque wrench, let's pretend it's 1 meter long, and you are adding 1 centimeter long adapter, that is going to add 1%, you know, more momentum to your reading, and you should correct for that. 1 centimeter, you know, compared to 1 meter, it's only 1%. That's not too much. But if your extension becomes comparable to the, you know, torque wrench, you can see that you can make a pretty huge error. For instance, if it's 20 centimeters compared to 1 meter torque wrench, you know, that's 20% you are going to be off. So for that reason, you need to correct for those. And the way how you are doing it, for instance, if your torque wrench is 1 meter, your adapter 20 centimeters, total is 1.2, which means that total torque value, you know, that you are going to achieve with that torque wrench, you need to divide by that 1.2. For instance, if you want to achieve, let's say, 120 newton meters, you are going to set only 100 on your torque wrench, because 120 divided by 1.2, now your whole length is 1 meter plus 20 centimeter of the extension, brings you to 1.2. 120 is a torque value that you want to achieve. 120 divided by 1.2 gives you 100 newton meters, and that's what you are going to set on your torque range, and that's why you can use even torque range with lower settings. Final thought, if you are using 90 degrees extensions, there is no correction there, only if they are in a line as a torque range. If they are 90 degrees, there is no correction needed. You are not changing any torque value there. If they are in any angle between 90 and 0, it gets a bit more complicated. You need to know that angle, and then with the sinus or cosine function you are able to calculate that, but the best approach is stay with either 0 or with 90. In any case, if you can avoid adding extensions, I would recommend doing that, unless they are really short and they don't matter, compared to the size of torque range. Okay, that's it regarding torque ranges. In next episode we are going to talk about some Airhead specialty tools that I'm using. I hope you liked this episode and you found it useful, and see you some next time. Stay tuned.